Okay, how do you guys feel about having another play session with materials? I just got back from New York this past week, and one of the places I visited was Pigments, which is it's a company that creates raw pigments, and you can take their pigments and mix them with any sort of binder medium. You have all these. I have all these from previous purchases in the past. This particular visit, I actually got some of these watercolor pans that are already mixed with gum arabic binder, so there's no need to do anything to them. And in particular, I got some of these sparkly ones over here, this gold and this pearlescent luster one. Thought that might be kind of fun to play with. I'll be talking in two parts today. First part will be about some of these pigments and mixing them and how to just use these guys. And secondly, some of these sparkly, shiny alternatives to actual gold leaf. Now, I don't often use these other things. Most often I use actual gold leaf in my paintings, and these are more for slight augmentations of areas or to mix in the case of this, which is a powder, just mixing it in directly with my watercolors and giving things kind of a sheen. But I'll show you some of these various options that I've got here and play around with them a little bit. So first of all, actually I want to just test out these new colors that I got, because I haven't even had a chance to do that yet since coming back from New York. First of all, there's this Prussian blue. I have another Prussian blue, but for some reason this one looked particularly enticing to me. It's a really nice, deep, rich blue. That's pretty nice. This is Creamer's Prussian blue. Let's see how that compares to the Daniel Smith Prussian blue that I've got. I love Prussian blue because it is a really intense tone, and as a result, just by itself, it's really nice to have this bright punch of blue, but mixing it in with other tones sometimes can get you a good variation of much brighter tones than you would otherwise. Now this is the wrong one I mixed. That one over there was lunar blue. That's not what I want. I want the Prussian blue, which is this one over here. This is the Daniel Smith one, just for comparison. Different brands get you very different subtleties in the colors. So even when they are the same, supposedly, you get variations. Now you can see the Creamer one is actually much higher intensity to it. Has more of that really vibrant tone, which is not to say that the Daniel Smith one is not extremely useful too, but it's nice to have this option. It's nice to be able to choose what I want in a painting. And sometimes when I'm going for really high contrasts of colors, it is particularly fun. Let's just try doing a wash. I'm going to just play around over here a little bit. I'm just wetting my entire page with water. And getting some of this Prussian blue. I'm going to tilt things up a little too so that my wash can blend better. And just because I enjoy having drips and weird spatter patterns, I'm going to do this. I'm going to spatter some at it. This is just water, and I'm just sprinkling it on there and letting it run. And I don't want this hard edge down here, so I'm going to continue my water all the way down to the bottom. There we go. I'm going to let that dry. Now, next thing I wanted to try out were these Lustre pigments. These were also from Creamer. Oh, look at how that Prussian really stains my brush. This was a white nylon brush a few minutes ago, and now it is a thoroughly stained Prussian blue brush. Okay, let's try this one. This one, when I saw it in the store, looked kind of silvery, although in its pan form over here it looks more pearly than silver. And indeed it is very pearly toned. Let's try this gold one. Let's see what happens with this. This one, I chose this one because it matches very well with 24 karat gold. And I'll show you why that is something I would look for. That's pretty nice too. That matches very well with the tones of 24 karat. Okay, so now why would I do that? Why would I want something that matches in tone? Well, frequently I'll have a piece and, well, I don't have anything right now. Let's just get some silver down here really fast. And just because I want to do this quickly, I'm going to be using watercolor ground to adhere this rather than sizing. Okay, I'm going to stick that on. And let's give that a few minutes to dry. Took a little break there while waiting for this gold and silver leaf over here to become adhered. And now it is. I'm just going to show you briefly why in particular I was looking for something that would match the tones. Sometimes when I have a piece of silver leaf or gold leaf on a painting and the leaf itself didn't get all the way to the edges, or I want to have some sort of gradation going out from the leaf itself into my watercolor painting, you can't do that with actual leaf because it's either there or it isn't. And so an alternative to using the metal leaf then is to use some kind of paint then in those areas. Now this, let's see how this matches. And then I can use it to blend outward from the actual metal into the painting. Now the silver doesn't match nearly as well as I hoped it would. Let's see about the gold. Now this is not the 24 karat gold here. This is just copper leaf actually. So it's not going to match in tone, but let's see how this works out. Pretty well actually. You can see that it looks a lot more yellow than the copper leaf itself does. But 24 karat gold is going to be this really bright yellow tone. So that is actually pretty perfect. And if I water it down, then I can have it blend outward into colors, which is ideal. So that's what those little guys are. I've been asked frequently what other types of gold I use in my paintings, because people actually assume most of the time that I'm using things of this sort, when probably about 90% of it is actual metal leaf instead. But I do occasionally employ other things like these. This is one that I've used most frequently. It is a Japanese mica based substance mixed with a binder, It doesn't actually have any English brand name on here, although I got it at a Dick Blick store. So perhaps if you're interested in this, you can go look around in Dick Blicks and see if you can find them. Now let's just see how these different golds vary and how they look. So this is the new one I got from Creamer. And this is the Japanese one. And what I like about this Japanese one is it's not terribly shimmery. And by shimmery, I mean that this Creamer one has a very glittery element to it that sometimes can be distracting because it looks, as I said, too much like glitter at times. Although I don't know about this in particular in actual usage because, as I said, I've just gotten it, haven't had a chance to employ it in an actual painting yet. The thing I really like about this one over here, though, is it has much more of a solid metallic look to it and less of that glittery aspect. But the color of it is not quite a match for 24 karat gold. Makes me wonder then if I were to mix these two, if I could get something more appropriate. Maybe a little bit of that and a little bit of this. And see how that turns out. And that does have a much more yellow look to it. That might be my go-to from now on. I like that because this Japanese one kind of tones down the glittery element that I have in that Creamer gold, but it gives a little bit of a hint of that yellowish tone, which is much more of a match to 24 karat. Some of the other stuff I have, these guys. Oh, first of all, pricing of this. I think this one was about $16. It's not a very large quantity. It's just basically a thin layer of this gold in this whole plate here. But I've had this for about 3 years. Again, though, like I said, I don't use it a whole lot. So make your judgment about that. These are some other random ones that I picked up at a flea market, actually. They were used, and they were about $1 each. I just found them, decided that they looked like fun to give a try too, so here they are. And this silver one actually is really promising looking. It does look quite a bit like the actual silver leaf. Again, it has that same quality that the Japanese one over there has, where it's less glittery and more of a sort of fluid metal look to it. And that actually works really well mixed up against a silver. It's almost indetectable. It's a little bit less shiny than the silver leaf itself is. Again, I wonder what happens if I were to mix this with some of that Creamer stuff, because the Creamer stuff has a brighter tone to it. It's more shimmery pearlescent, but it's kind of what this one's lacking. It's almost a little bit too dull. So let's see if I mix those two, if that gets me what I want. And again, it does. That's pretty nice. A mixture of these two. So you see, I play around with materials a lot. I pick up all these random things. Like I said, these were just $1 little thingy doodles at a flea market. Just happened to come across, tossed in a bunch of pens and architect supplies. No one else seemed to know what to do with them or want them, and so the vendor was happy to get rid of them cheaply to me. But you get these things. You just find what's around you and look around and see what you can play with, and often you can find things that might work out really well. This is another example of that. These are a discontinued line of things that Daniel Smith makes, although I have a feeling that I was recently on the internet somewhere and I saw a very similar product to this. What this is again, some kind of mica powder that has been mixed with a binder powder, so that once you drop some water into it, it turns into a paintable substance. So you can see it's just powder in here. And I'm going to take a little bit of it on the tip of my brush. So as I said, this stuff is discontinued, but if you look around, you might be able to find something similar, because I know I saw somebody creating a very similar type of substance. It may have been Daniel Smith also recently. It was something that I noticed in passing on the internet within this past month. So then I just mix water into it, and you see it becomes very similar to these other silvery things that I was using. And again, I can do that. The really cool thing about this powder one is I love to mix it in with other pigments and have just this little bit of a shimmer. It's not as noticeable as glitter or as tacky. It just adds a little bit of something, and it can be kind of fun to do that. It can be pretty subtle. And sometimes people will be looking at something and then they say, hey, is there a little bit of a shimmer to that? So that's another one that I use. And finally, there is this. This is Mica flakes. These are actually quite chunky. Let's see, how does this thing even open? I don't think I've opened this container yet. I had a few different colors of these mica flakes. This one is the more silvery one right now that I've got in front of me. I've also got some that are more goldish toned. Now again, this one is in a powder form, but unlike, whoa, unlike the other one I just showed you, it does not have a binder mixed into it. So it is just pure flakes. It's a little bit like a mineral glitter. Now, the flakes are sort of translucent. They're actually not fully metallic. I'm just making a mess, just like glitter does. I'm gonna have this all over my studio for the next week. Now, because it doesn't have any binder in it, in order for it to stick to your page, you're going to need to mix it with something that is going to make it adhere. I don't think gum arabic is going to hold well enough, and so actually I'm going to use some clear watercolor ground. This is a mess. I haven't actually used this stuff in a long time. I think the last time I used it was for my daughter's birthday party last year, when we made, it was a Harry Potter themed birthday party, and we made wands and painted them, and then she went absolutely nuts with just sprinkling this stuff all over the wands. That's pretty much the last time I actually employed it. All right, so I have a lot of it on my brush here. What happens here? And I just stick it on. It's definitely a very different effect from the other products that I have here. It's more chunky. It's going to add texture, which could be kind of interesting to play off of if I were to let this dry in the watercolor ground and then paint on top of that. And it has this grainy texture to it, and that could create lots of really beautiful pooling of the pigment and physical texture to play with. So this is mica flakes, and you can buy them most art stores. I think I got this online, either Jerry's Artorama or Dick Blick. And essentially, really, it's the same thing, except this is in a slightly different format, much more rough and raw, whereas this is a much more refined version and gold toned. But they are both based on mica. The nice thing about using mica is it's not going to tarnish. If you're using anything that's actually metallic based, you have to worry about it tarnishing over time. And so unless you're using 24 karat gold, and even then it's probably a good idea to put some kind of sealer over your piece when you're done, so that you don't either lose the gold itself and gold flakes falling off, or lose the luster to tarnishing and blackening. All right, so that's a bunch of these metallic things. Whew. Let's go back to my initial Prussian blue wash, which is this gorgeous, brilliant blue now. I love that. Oh, I have this other one that I created also on the side. This has some silver leaf over here on this side of it, and a wash of some of this. Actually, it's also creamer. This is elderflower pigment, and similar to this metallic watercolor, it is a powder that is mixed with a little bit of binder, so that you can just directly put some water into it and then start painting. But I wanted to actually go over here and blend some of the silver, because you could see, especially with the lighting over here like this, when the lighting is not so direct on it, it actually blends quite well. But when the light falls on it, you see, here's the edge of the silver leaf. And I don't really want that over here. I want more of a gradation. I want it to flow from one to the next. And so I'm gonna go with that mixture that I discovered earlier works quite well. Earlier in our experimentation here with me, which was this wonky flea market silver, $1 flea market silver, and mixing that with a much more spendy creamer pigment silver luster. This was $10 for this watercolor pan. And now that I have that mixture, actually I want more of the silvery luster, more of the pearly luster I mean, and less of the silvery to match better. And diluting it, you could see especially well with the lighting from this angle how the luster is blending. And that's the key thing that I'm trying to accomplish here. This seamless gradiated blend. And it's working pretty well for that purpose. I'm leaving some areas like this because I just like that rough texture. I'm all about that stuff, as well as this texture in here. That's just fun stuff. I don't know what I'm going to make with this piece. Right now it's just colors and reflection. And from here, I'm gonna just see what I can find and what shapes I see in it and try to pull that out. And so the end result is a combination of the silver leaf and of these various pigment products that allow me to create this illusion of a gradation between the actual metal and paper.